Hello, and welcome to the Argyle Financial Controller Leadership Forum, Technologies and Strategies for Growth. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. For those seeking CPE credit today, you must answer at least 3 polling questions and remain on the session for its duration. Polls can be found under the Polls tab on the right-hand side of your console next to Chat. Afterwards, if you are eligible to receive credit, you will receive an email with a link to your certificates. If you have any questions on credits, please email cpe@argyleforum.com. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Ashok Manthina, AI strategist and author, AI for Finance, ChatFin. We're super excited to have Ashok and our panelists for a panel discussion titled Navigating Transformation and New AI Implementations. Welcome, Ashok. Over to you.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here, and welcome to the session, Navigating Transformation and New AI Implementation. Today, we're going to talk about controllers and how this new technology is changing the roles of controllers. A quick introduction, I'm Ashok Manthina. I've been working in finance for a long time, finance and finance technology, and I've been implementing AI in finance right now, working with ChatFin. Today, I have very reputed panel members, Denise and Eugene. Denise and Eugene, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Ashok. Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Johnson. I'm COO of Stratify. Stratify, we provide transparent, interpretable machine learning solutions for financial institutions in credit risk decisioning, fraud detection, as well as bias detection and mitigation in AI. And my background is like Ashok, coming out of finance and financial institutions, being at the intersection of product and finance and implementing AI solutions globally. Eugene, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having this panel today. Thank you to the organizers of Argyle Forum. Thank you, Ashok, for moderating the panel. Looking forward to our discussion. My name is Eugene Spivakov. I'm a treasurer at 6 Cents. In addition to treasury, I handle corporate FP&A and accounts payable. I've been with 6 Cents for the past 2 years, and prior to my current role, I've been in a number of finance and treasury roles across several semiconductor companies. Now, going back to before my semiconductor days, I spent time with AT&T, also in finance and treasury roles. And some of you might be familiar with 6 Cents, but for those of you who are not, 6 Cents is a subscription-based software as a service company. We operate in rep tech space, particularly in account-based marketing. Now, to put it in more plain language, what we do is we use data and software that we develop in-house. They use cool predictive algorithms. We leverage AI in order to help our customers find their future customers faster and more efficiently. In other words, we make the job of sales and marketing teams a lot easier using our cool technology. Thank you. Over to you, Ashok.
Right. I'm very glad to know these two personally. So I just want to add, Denise is like an expert in predictive analytics. If you have any questions, she's the person to talk to. And Eugene has amazing domain expertise, both semiconductor industry and now marketing tech. And he's also a future forward looking in terms of technology. So great to have you both here on this panel. And to start with, right, the role of controllers has been evolving much rapidly than any other function. It used to be more traditional bookkeeping, but now if you talk to a controller, they're doing risk management, they're doing technology implementations, and also analytics in their space. And of course, compliance, privacy, security is the biggest need for a controller. And this evolution is also being driven from the market, from the industries at this point of time. If you think about any ERP implementation, and also on top of it, if you're thinking about AI implementation, it's the controllers who are jumping ahead and who are saying, I want to do this, who are proactive in bringing new technology to this space. There are various reasons for this. You might have seen these headlines that there are less and less people going into accounting and finance than any other functions in a company. And you know the reasons why. There's a lot of manual work that's usually done in controllers and the tasks in the controllers and in other finance functions. So a lot of this new generation are a little shying away from thinking that there are a lot of manual tasks, but there are a lot of controllers now being proactive and thinking, how do we change this? How do we bring technology so that we can automate a lot of manual work, but then do things that really matters for the company, even for the personal employee? So with that, I want to start with Denise. Can you pinpoint any biggest pain point that you have seen in finance so far in your career?
So I'm going to refer to some of the things that you mentioned, Ashok. So it's very manual still. The processes are not automated. A lot of manual work. But the other aspect of it is the data is hard to get to. There's data in disparate systems. And because in finance, we tend to be very detail-oriented, and traditionally this is finance is thought as a cost center, we focus on point solutions rather than a holistic approach where we should be thinking about finance teams more of a strategic group. And I see a great potential for automation, for insights. This is a group that is doing projections, predictions, simulations. So by thinking outside, looking at finance department as a competitive advantage with great insights, I see a great opportunity.
That's right. Eugene, what's your biggest pain point in finance?
I'll probably echo some of the things that Denise just mentioned. But first, I'll say that there are many pain points, and there are many challenges. And as you solve one challenge, another one comes up. As I like to say, there's always another hill to climb.
It's never ending.
It's never over. But if I want to generalize as to what the source of a lot of current challenges are, it's we operate in a very fast-paced environment, right? Internally, and internal environment moves fast, external environment moves fast, whether you're a fast growth company or you may be facing some other industry pressures or other industry dynamics, you have to move fast, and people look to finance to help out with decisions, with support, and you have to provide service to your stakeholders. Now, when they're looking for answers and solutions, they want those solutions to be data-driven, right? People just don't want you to guess things. They want you to leverage data. And there's plenty of data now. The challenge is, how do you organize it? Because a lot of data, as Denise mentioned, it lives in separate systems. It's not very well connected. You might have systems that are very robust, but they themselves are not connected to other systems that well, oftentimes. So, and then within these systems that are robust, because they're complex, they become rigid. Think of an ERP. Yes, it can do a lot of things, but if you want to change things or create something different out of it, you need to engage your IT team to rewrite things. So it's not that simple. So systems are not well connected, they become rigid. And then what do we do in finance? As finance professionals, we often rely on Excel, which is a great tool, and it's very flexible, and that's why I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. So it offers you that flexibility, but the flip side of Excel, it's very manual, and it's prone to errors, prone to user errors. So the challenge is really, how do we get this data, how do we process the data, and how do we balance the robustness of the systems against its rigidities, and then the flexibility that we could get from Excel with all the manual work that's involved and all the errors that it might generate.
Right. I was just preparing a slide for this. If the teams between reactive and proactive, right? If a finance team is reactive, and if they don't have integration or technology support, it's going to be fire drill every day. right? But if you think about it, less technology, and if the team is proactive, you know what happens? There will be a bunch of manual processes. So they get work done, but things are very manual in terms of Excel templates or manually triggering all those jobs. So it's going to happen that way. So moving on to how is AI being utilized to improve business right now? What have you seen so far? How is AI changing the business world?
So I'll give a few examples from our work. I mentioned that we work in credit risk decisioning and fraud. We are working with a group called Underwriting for Racial Justice. This is about 20 financial institutions who are specifically expanding the credit access to traditionally underrepresented groups. And to be able to do that, because our credit scores are inherently biased, they're looking at all of the data that they have collected, and we are working with them to provide, utilizing our unique technology, provide insights and showing them how they can improve their underwriting without increasing the risk. So normally you immediately think of AI, ML increasing the risk of an organization. It's actually the opposite. It is keeping the risk into what they are, what these institutions are comfortable with, while saying yes to more customers that are on their target communities that they want to serve. So that is an active program that we're working on, as I mentioned. And then the other one is fraud. We're detecting more fraud faster while reducing the false positives. Again, normally if you're looking at Excel-based decisioning, for lack of a better term, referring to what Eugene said, you have these hard specific rules that you're looking at when you're in fraud. But if there is a possibility of combining these rules and logic and getting best of both worlds, so catch fraud, more fraud, faster, while reducing the false positives. And we're working on that with a very large institution, one of the core institutions. And this is true for transaction fraud. What we're working on right now is transaction fraud. But if you extrapolate this could also you see a lot of AI in detecting financial fraud, predicting agent fraud. And then, of course, another area we are doing is detecting bias in AI and mitigating for that bias. And that's usually you see it in the fair lending analysis. When institutions are concerned about their models inadvertently being biased, not because they made a mistake, but data changes, models change. That's where we also provide oversight, and it is a great concern.
Eugene, what are you seeing right now in the business world and how AI is changing it?
I'll summarize it. So it's all about automation, right? It's all about taking these manual processes and connecting the data and having AI basically, do a lot of the grunt work for you. And what it comes down to is you save time, you save money, and you improve accuracy because you cut out a lot of manual stuff. Again, this has to be done correctly, and we can get into some more details maybe later in this discussion. But as far as applications, the applications can be very broad. It could be anything from forecasting to reconciliations to doing, for example, budget versus actual analysis. I mean, it's vast. I mean, another good use case for AI, right, with the emergence of language models and improvements in OCR technology, you combine those two things and AI can read things for you and populate things for you. So very specific use case, you're submitting expense reimbursements, right? Now that can be more efficient. Before you have to type in everything yourself, now AI can read your receipt for you and populate for you. So again, it's a very narrow, small use case, but just to be used as an example. And of course, fraud as well. Denise mentioned several fraud issues in her field, but could be everywhere. And AI is very good at detecting fraud if you train the models correctly. And so things like around payments, that I've seen technology that can reduce potential fraud in the business setting.
That's right. What I've seen so far, of course, with very finance specific, is reconciliation is a big problem with controllers. Of course, we'll talk about it. And then forecasting, flux analysis, variance analysis, all these are issues. But recently in my conversation with the CFO, I asked, what's your biggest pain point where you think AI can help you to solve it? He said, government filings has been a big problem for them. And each filing is of this size, right? With all the paperwork. Someone needs to go fill it, take printouts and make sure everything is right. They said, if AI can help, that would solve their biggest pain points. And that came as a surprise for me. See, there's still a lot of, we can build all these automation within the company, but now you're dealing with external party, you're still doing a lot of manual work, just filling those forms and then printing it out and making sure everything is right. If AI can help in those cases, that would be a biggest value addition for I'm sure there are a lot of people working on this case.
That's a great use case because, again, the system's not connected. Your ERP is not connected to a government system, right? So you get things manually. You'd be lucky to get in a readable format. Sometimes you might get a letter. Well, now AI is advanced enough to be able to read a letter, not necessarily PDF, but character recognition has gone a long way. So you can scan things in. It can read it for you. It can understand what it is. You can look up what needs to be done. Even if you can say, hey, I need to file this government filing, please follow, this protocol. And by the way, look up the latest statutes for me to make sure I'm not making any errors. AI can do this for you. It's something that you can hire an analyst to do that would take a lot longer and that could introduce some errors, or AI can do it much faster and hopefully save you time and money.
Maybe it can negotiate with the government as well.
I also have to say that on the compliance side of things, there's really great improvements using a variety of flavors of AI to build compliance systems that touches your financials, kind of what Eugene has mentioned, your financials and your regulations, and actually checking to make sure that you're in compliant with all the parameters that you're working on, so you don't have to worry about it.
That's right. Now, changing gears and coming to finance specific and also controllers, what have you seen in terms of where AI is being implemented right now in controller function?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that first of all, AI is a very broad term, so it could mean different things to different people. And also to level set, want to say that AI is just an automation tool. It's a tool in a line of many tools that we have in the past, but I would venture to guess that it's going to be a very, very powerful tool, maybe something on par with what personal computing has done. So, but it's still an automation tool. And as such, it's not going to be a magic bullet. It's not going to magically solve all your problems. If you have a broken process, a very good automation tool will automate a broken process, but it's still going to be broken. So you really have to keep this in mind. You need to get the processes under control and design them the way you want to, right? Not just say, hey, AI, go fix it for me, because I don't think it's going to work very well. Maybe you get lucky, but most times it won't. Also, if we think about where I can help, I kind of in my head just compartmentalized the workflows into 4 areas when it comes to finance, whether you do analysis or you addressing a challenge. I'd say the first area is your inputs, right? Inputs is data. I don't think AI can help you get the data. AI actually relies on good data. I think most experts agree that unless you have good data, AI won't be helpful. So AI will not necessarily generate inputs for you. On the back end of the process, you have output, right? Can AI help you define the output? Maybe it can help you a little bit with creativity there, but chances are AI will not be able to help you define your output. You have to know what problem you're solving. You have to know what results you want to get out of your analysis or out of your solution. The third area I would say is going from point A of inputs to point B of outputs. And how do you get there? It has to be some kind of framework. There has to be logic how you get there. Can I help you? Perhaps. There's probably more opportunity for I to be creative and come up with this framework. However, you know your business better than AI would. You know your stakeholders, you know internal environment, external environment, you know business drivers, you know how sensitive your business to these different business drivers. So chances are in putting the framework together of how you're going to get from inputs to outputs and developing this logic, chances are you're going to end up doing most of the heavy lifting there, not AI. And then the last point is the last stage is the actual execution. That's where you have to go build the model. That's where you maybe have to, write the code. Maybe you have to pull some data. You have to organize the data. Maybe you have to create some reporting. And I think this is the area where AI can be very helpful because a lot of these things are manual. And I think AI is intelligent enough now to understand what you're starting with, what you want to get to, how you want to get there, and then go and execute. So I think that's where AI can be really helpful. I'll also add, to be kind of more specific, where does it happen, right? In my experience, most businesses don't go and build an in-house solution for a specific problem. Say, hey, we're going to use AI to build a solution. What they do is they see a potential solution or opportunity, potential problem or opportunity, and they figure out what kind of solution they can procure to address that problem. And to the extent that the vendors who provide these solutions, to the extent that they embed AI to enhance their products, this is the extent that the end user then benefits from AI by using that product that's enhanced with AI features, and it maybe becomes more user-friendly, it's faster to adopt, it's more robust, it gives them better reporting, et cetera, et cetera.
I want to add to what Eugene has said. I mean, I agree with everything. I mean, it was a very comprehensive response, but I want to add a couple of nuances. One of them is the data is important, and sometimes you're not going to have data. So do you have enough indicators or enough other sources of information that you can pull in to enrich what you might not have? So that's one. The second thing is, but even before that, the first thing that Eugene said is what business problem are you trying to solve? That is the crux of it. I'm going to share what maybe it's a good segue to the next topic you might want to bring, Ashok, but I have just been talking to an individual who is head of technology, and she said, well, my board wants to implement an AI, but the same board is very risk averse. What do I do? So again, what business problem are you trying to solve? Because AI and many flavors of AI, whether it is, chatbot, or if it is predictive analysis, machine learning, these are all tools, and there's different tools to solve a different problem. But you have to be holistic to what Eugene has said and not go at it as, okay, now I have to implement AI, because that's putting the technology before the business problem. Almost like reverse order.
That's right. With the advent of generative AI, I think we have seen a few use cases which are really helpful for controllers. For example, if we talk about reconciliation, a lot of manual work, right? It involves extracting data, extracting the right data, then trying to change the formats to match the data, and your job doesn't end there, right? When you find discrepancies, you have to go fix them. So we're all used to doing this process manually, but I think AI can really help in this, right? I mean, even if finding the discrepancies can be automated, then you can go fix it manually, or even you can automate that process as well, right? And flux analysis, variance analysis, all this takes a lot of time, a lot of analysis and data in doing it. And also one of the biggest win, I think, comes when, for a controller, before their month-end closes or a quarter-end closes, if they can identify any problems beforehand, not on the BD plus 3 day, right? Or before they just close. If they can identify it few days before, that gives them good sleep at nights, right? They don't have to really worry about what's going to happen. Will they be able to close the quarter on time or not? So those are things I think generative AI is playing a big role. I just want to differentiate those two things, right? There is generative AI and there is also predictive analytics. Two different things. Both have use cases for controllers. Generative AI, like Denise mentioned, it's going to be a chatbot, something like that, which really helps you do your processes much more automated way. And predictive analytics can actually find the patterns in your data, find anomalies in your data, and let you know if there's any problem with that. So two different things which can really help controllers. Now coming back to this, Denise, the topic about how the board is thinking, how C-suite people are thinking about AI. I ran a poll very recently. I asked, what is that thing that is stopping you from implementing AI in your finance process? And the winner of that poll is the option where the reluctance from the leadership, right? I think it's given. Now, what's the reason, and what is that? How is the conversations happening right now with the C-suite regarding AI? And is there a push? Is there a pull? Let us know your thoughts.
So my experience is, as I mentioned, there's definitely a push and pull simultaneously. So it's a so there's no movement because it's the, oh, I need to do something. I need to say that I am innovative, or I need to say that I am embracing technology. But is that really what? Is that the right driver for the business? Absolutely not. So you need to be looking at the what the business problem you're solving. On the other hand, technologists and department heads are now, where do I start? What is the first step of trying to implement whatever it is, whatever AI flavor it is? But I need to show some innovation. I think we need to start with the business problem and then the approach. What tool is right for it? And I think one of the biggest things is, as an implementer, I have a kind of a list of things that I do, but the first thing that I would say is making sure that you understand the business, not just the business problem, but the business risk tolerance and the control points. Those are three things that needs to be going into a conversation. Like if you don't have a risk tolerance, you're not going to implement any innovative technology that includes, even if it is Excel on steroids. It's not going to, you're not ready for any new thing. But if you have some risk tolerance, if you're really looking at it from a more of a strategic perspective, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, where thinking of the finance department as a strategic competitive advantage to your organization, that can do a lot of predictive analysis, simulations, projections using AI while also automating, as Eugene said, then this is a great opportunity. Eugene, any thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with you on one of the points you made, that a lot of probably C-suite and maybe even at the board level, there are questions. Hey, what's this AI thing, and what are we doing about it? How are we using it? Because everybody's talking about it, right? Questions. I wouldn't say they're perfunctory, but this is more curiosity to try. Hey, are we missing out on something? Are we not taking advantage of opportunity? Are we fully taking advantage of opportunity if we are using AI? So there's those type of questions, but the rest of it is more business specific, and it's not necessarily AI specific. It's, how do we become more efficient? How do we automate things? We talk about automation domination. Let's get rid of manual processes. We want to measure things in hours saved. We want to measure it in amount of money we save, right? And then the flip side of it is how much is it going to cost us? So it's a cost benefit analysis. And if the answer where you get more benefit than the cost involves AI, that's great. A lot of times it will. With the new technology, it can be leveraged. Probably not all cases, though. You can probably automate and improve and streamline things even without AI. So again, to your point, it's not that we need to say we must do something with the AI and then let's find a problem it can solve. It's more, what problems do we have now? Let's find the solution. And if the solution has AI, that's great.
As I talk to a lot of finance teams and companies, there are three sets of companies. One, the first set is where they're jumping onto AI. They want to be ahead of the curve in terms of how do we use this? How do we get the gains from this AI? So very few, but these guys are jumping into it and getting the benefits of AI and implementing AI. There's another set where, of course, they still haven't decided, they haven't thought about it, right? But there's a clear third set where people have said, we are not going to do anything now. We're going to wait till this evolves and this gives a clear ROI, clear use cases where we can do it. Not going to do anything. So I think it's the 1 and 3 are pretty clear about what they're going to do. Of course, the second set is still figuring out and thinking about, and these questions come up, right? In terms of curiosity, what are we doing? What should we do? Can we do anything about it? Now, in terms of thinking about what is a successful AI automation, AI or in terms of some kind of automation, right? AI automation implementation looks like for finance.
I'll step back as I mentioned, as an implementer, you have to think big when you're dealing with anything AI related. And Eugene earlier spoke about how this is a game changer technology. So you need to really think about the ROI very differently. Traditionally, we think of ROI as, is it an efficiency gain? Here is X number of FTEs, or here's the cost that I'm saving. With AI, you can't think of that being the only thing, because ROI is much bigger than a point solution. So to be able to do a successful implementation, you have to start with a very robust understanding of the business case. So we talked about multiple times the business, what business problem you're solving, but the justification of it is even as important. So there's the first one is efficiency gain through automation, doing the same amount of work with less people or less cost, it's given. But then, as Eugene said, there's an accuracy. You're now doing it more accurately because there's less manual work. So that needs to go in. The other part is scalability. You're doing more work with less people or less cost. Third point is control points. You might not need all the control points that you need in finance to do the same work, which means risk reduction. Right. And you need to be able to quantify your risk reduction now, which we'd never talk about. Right. And then the fourth one is workflow, which is you might not actually need all the steps to do the work that you're doing, because your control points will come out because of the way that the machine is working, because of how it impacts your work. What that means is that you now have faster response times to your clients, so you have higher customer satisfaction and more positive experiences. So now all of a sudden your business justification is not about, oh my God, we're doing AI and I don't know what I'm, how to explain this, to very methodical, this is my business case, and here is the cost, but here's the justification. It's not only the business problem, but how is the solution going to impact your organization as a whole?
Right. Eugene?
Yeah, I mean, Denise laid out very good points and very, very, very detailed. I'll just say on a high level that, you implement an AI, and as I mentioned, AI is a tool. It's a lot of times a tool for automation. So anytime you implement a new tool, you have to define what problem are you solving, and then you have to define what successful implementation will look like. So whether implementation is successful or not depends, have you achieved the goals that you set out to do, right? If your goal was to tell people that, hey, I've implemented AI, and if you implemented AI, it doesn't do anything, fine, you achieved your goal. But that's probably was not your goal, right? You're not going to outline that kind of goal. You're going to outline specific things that you want this tool to deliver. And then as you look back post-implementation, you see which milestones you hit and what it actually delivered. And that's how you measure the success of implementation, right? Sure. So there's a recurring theme here that I'm trying to kind of harp on, that don't buy into the hype, right? AI is everywhere. Buy into the substance. What does it actually do for you? What can it solve for you? And what are maybe some even ancillary benefits from the solution, right? I mean, a lot of people call everything AI nowadays. Back in the day, things were called smart. You used to have smart home, smart this, smart that. Now it's like home, powered by AI. Well, it's the same technology that was just rebranded, right? So it's not about the brand of technology that you're using, right? Whether it has AI in its name or not. It's what does it actually do? How well does it solve the problem that you want to solve? So I'll leave it at that.
Right. A lot of people right now believe that we are at the peak of hype cycle of AI, but my controversial opinion is we still haven't reached there. There is more to go. We're going to see more use cases, more hype coming up in the next few months, 2 years. So we'll see how this all evolves. And one point that stuck to me, what Denise and Eugene said, is the ROI calculations of AI projects need to be different from how we do it for, let's say, software like an ERP implementation. Because let's say if you take an example of you're implementing a new system, the use cases it's going to solve, right? It is limited, and probably 1,000 different companies have done that, so you can learn from them in terms of what are the pitfalls, what are the things. But with AI, such a new technology, the use cases are evolving, and some use cases might work, and in some cases it might not. But that shouldn't stop us from implementing this new technology. This is one technology I think that's going to change the human race totally to a different level. This is probably at the level of inventing a fire wheel and probably computers, right? So this is going to change our life. From that, now someone asked this question on Q&A, is about the limitations of AI models and how they are giving inaccurate output, such as false data. Is that still an issue, or we see some kind of solutions for it? Denise, what do you see right now currently in the market?
So I'm going to start with the Chat GPT, because the last 5 events I have been to, everybody that talked about AI was actually talking about Chat GPT.
Yes.
And specifically for ChatGPT, we're dealing with a technology that's trying to find a use case right now, and it is not fully baked. So it's pretty much predicting what the next information usually comes after this bit of information that it's being fed. It is not giving us a new information, but it is learning based on our responses. So of course, it's again half-baked. We're not there yet. It's a social experiment, in my opinion. However, what is important is to understand, in ChatGPT's situation, it's giving the answers with such confidence in a human-like manner that we tend to believe what it's saying and then realize that it is wrong. We, like any technology, we have to question technology to make sure that we are, what we give to what Eugene said, the information we're giving it to train it is accurate enough or is representative of the truth so that we can respond, we can get a meaningful output. With ChatGPT, we do not know that. And because of that, of course, there's no guarantee that the data output is going to become, accurate or not, because we have no idea. It's purely black box.
That's right.
One other thing that I want to add, because this really touches to something that we actively work on Stratify, which is the transparency. It is incredibly important, especially in highly regulated industries like finance, that the data that we use is confident. We deal with confidential data on a daily basis, but we need to understand the data that's going in, and we need to be able to have full visibility on how these models are being trained and what the output is. Because today, when we talk about explainable AI, it is after the fact. You have another model that explains kind of sort of what the underlying technology does.
Right.
You do not have the full transparency. So this is when I mentioned what we do in Stratify, we have a proprietary way of building machine learning models that allows us that during training, humans can interpret what's going on. And that's incredibly important to avoid bias, to avoid, to understand anything that is going off the mark where you're supposed to be. And we cannot remove human out of the loop. It is incredibly important, especially in our profession, to have that human understanding, subjective, that insight in there.
That's right. So my experience working with AI models, of course, they give inaccurate output once in a while, but there are actually techniques to curtail them, to make them grounded so that they give the accurate results. There are techniques to it, and those techniques are evolving. But right now, what we have right now is working. And one of the approach that we take is when we release a feature, we only release a feature when it works 100% of the time. The rest of the time, we let our model say, don't give an answer for it. Right? We restrict it to the very specific use cases where it works, where it doesn't. So that's one of the approach where we take in terms of not giving a wrong answer or inaccurate output, which is nightmare for the users to get an inaccurate answer, particularly in finance. Right? It's not like a chat GPT. You can re-ask the question and get an answer.
I think you have to know what you can use the tools for and what your tool does. Right. So if you're using a probabilistic model like ChatGPT, it's going to guess the best answer that you want. It might not necessarily give you a correct answer. So you have to know that it's guessing. What does it mean? Well, if you are accepting a probable answer, you have to double check it. You have to verify it. Right. It's not like, hey, ChatGPT told me, so I did it. Think of ChatGPT as a junior analyst. They came in and you said, hey, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, go do blah, blah, these steps and write a report for me, have it on my desk tomorrow morning. Well, you still need to read report because chances are they might have made a mistake. They're just starting out, right? So it's the same thing. If you want a very specific, accurate answer, maybe a probabilistic model is not the best. Use something that's very deterministic. But you have to know what tool you're using, and you have to know what tools can and cannot do. And you have to double check their work. I mean, humans need to check for reasonableness.
That's right. Right. To get started in AI, because now everyone is thinking, how do we get started? How do we select a tool? How do we, what do we learn? So are there any best practices in terms of how do we get started? Where do we get started?
Okay, I'm going to echo Eugene. Start with the business problem. I think we have said this in every conversation. Start with the business problem, and then decide the tool. The next step for me would be defining your controls. And I know this is a little bit, normally you don't think about that, but because there is a need in the implementations that we do, that we need to know where the control points are. And the reason why, if you know your control points, where you're going to put your controls, that is also going to be your justification when you're in front of the risk committee. And do not automatically assume that your compliance team is going to say no. And then getting compliance involved after you define the controls, getting their buy-in before you start the implementation is incredibly important when you're dealing with AI, because you get everybody's comfort level early on. And then make sure that your business case has the ROIs that I mentioned. And then we always do POCs, proof of concepts, to show that not only did we do what we say we're going to do, but here, let us show you. That's because there's so much buzz and misconception and anxiety around AI products that we want to first show you, look, we can deliver before, before you actually get the full implementation. And it helps when you're dealing with people who've been in your shoes, who've been on the other side, actually choosing these products back in the day helps them, give confidence. And Eugene, I kind of went in my list of things, but please.
Yeah, no, I'll reiterate it for probably the fourth or fifth time. Don't look for a problem to fit into a solution. Identify a problem and then look for a solution that addresses your problem. So you have to define your problem. You have to define what you want it to solve. You have to define what the output should look like. You most likely have to figure out what framework you want to have for your solution. And then, then figure out, who's out there can deliver it for you. You want to build it in-house, or do you want to get something that's already built? Chances are it's something that's already built. You can look at demos, you can do RFPs, right? It's just like any other tool. If you're choosing the ERP, right, I'm sure there's best practices for doing that. If you're choosing a treasury management system, that's near and dear to my heart, right? There are tools for doing RFP for a treasury management system, right? And now those tools embed more AI, and you can say, hey, is the AI that's embedded, is that going to make my life easier? Is my forecast going to be more accurate based on the framework that is going to use to create this forecast? That's just an example, right? I mean, it's not that, hey, here's a template for starting with AI, but you have to forget everything you've done in the past. No, it's just another iteration in the evolution of technology. And, Ashok is very, very bullish on it. I'm pretty bullish on it, right? It's going to be great technology, but it's still another step in technological evolution. And I think the way we approach it shouldn't be that much different. Like, oh my God, we can't get started because it's AI, right? No, you've done this before, and you follow a similar template. You just understand what the nuances are with this particular solution.
Great point, Eugene. I just came to know about a term called innovator's bias. That means people go very positive on one thing. They usually ignore all the cons of it until something really breaks. So that's innovator's bias that happens for every technology. I think most of us are in that at this point of time until we realize what's really breaking. So we have one more minute. If you have any questions in the audience, do let us know. I'd be happy to answer. Meanwhile, do you guys see any reluctance from the employees when there is an AI initiative coming in? Eugene, have you seen that? If you have seen that, how would you address that? Something like the reluctance from the employee.
I would say, again, I'm kind of bringing this to the most common denominator, that it's a technology that's been implemented. In any change, there's always resistance. There's always apprehension of change. Right. AI is no different. You put a new tool in there, there's going to be resistance, there's going to be apprehension. Right. To get around it, it's the same playbook that we've used for other implementations. You have to communicate the value. You have to, make sure that there is a value, right? You have to communicate the value. You have to understand who your audience is. You have to understand who's going to be your early adopters, who are going to be your supporters. You have to figure out who your executive sponsor would be, for example. You also have to know who your detractors are. You have to understand what the critical mass needs to be in order to win the detractors over. So I think that's more of a change management approach, that you deal with with any new implementation. AI is no different. Maybe it makes it easier because everybody's, excited about it. So if you say that it's AI, people are going to give you more leeway.
That's right. All right. I think we are out of time. And any final thoughts, Denise?
I think there's great opportunity, as I mentioned, but I will agree as we have, I think now the 6th time saying, start with the problem, and think big. Definitely think big, and think big in how you're going to implement and how, even at the ROI, even at the business case level, your business justification should include all the things that is going to benefit the organization by bringing such a powerful tool. Even if you're going to use it for one section, you're going to end up expanding the use once you feel comfortable. The opportunity is there, but to Eugene's point, start with the business problem. This is just another tool, but you do, on the business case, there's so much more impact.
That's right. All right. Thank you. Over to you, Nick.
Great. Well, thank you all for such an insightful panel discussion. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. For those of you who earned points throughout today's event, an Argyle team member will be following up with the winners in the next couple of weeks. This officially concludes the Argyle Financial Controller Leadership Forum, Technologies and Strategies for Growth. Thank you again for joining us today and engaging in our content. We look forward to seeing you at our next Argyle Digital Finance event soon, which will be our CFO Leadership Summit, FinTech Trends and Applications on May 30th, 2024. Have a great rest of your day.